Eric.
Good morning, members of the media. Good morning to the people of our great republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to the United National Congress press conference, which will, for all intents and purposes, bring down the curtains for 2021 as we usher in 2022. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, may I, on behalf of the leader, the political leader of our great party, the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, and our thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of supporters, friends, and well-wishers, extend to each and every one of you in our great republic happy holiday greetings, and to extend to each and every one of you a very safe, a very healthy, a very productive, a very united, a very liberated and progressive 2022. We have looked, and we will be looking briefly in review, and also focusing on 2022. 2021 is about to close. It has been a year of naked brutality, systematic oppression, and rampant exploitation of the working people by a minority ably assisted and supported by this modern-day dictator, Keith Christopher Rowley, which has seen and witnessed the gap between the poor and the rich extending and widening, income and wealth inequality growing, unemployment and underemployment increasing, healthcare, education, infrastructure have all but collapsed in our country. So we are in, and we have experienced a very brutal 2021 under this modern day dictator. As we look at the wreckage that Rowley has left as 2021 comes to an end, and we prepare for an epic battle and struggle in 2022. We have at our press conference this morning the Honorable Member for Couva South, the Shadow Minister with responsibility for labor and industrial relations in our country, the Honorable Rudranath Indarse. He will address you on some very pertinent issues surrounding developments that impacted negatively on the working class of our nation. And I will come a little later on to deal with the attacks on our democratic institutions and the whole merry-go-round and yo-yo that is currently taking place with that matter of the floating restaurant. and no one wishing and wanting to take responsibility. So at this point in time, I would like to turn over the proceedings to my honorable colleague and friend, the member for Couva South, Shadow Minister with responsibility for labor, to now address this very important press conference hosted by the United National Congress, the alternative government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Comrade Member Honorable Rudranath Indase. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Senator Wade Mark. As I join you in expressing the issues that are burning and impacting upon the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and I take the opportunity to join with you on behalf of the Leader of the Opposition to extend best wishes to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago on the coming of 2022 in a couple of hours into our nation, but also as we reflect upon 2021 and how it has impacted upon the well-being of our country, on the quality of life and standard of living of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I say a pleasant good morning to each and every one of you, and especially to our political leader, the Honorable Kamla Persad Bissessar, our colleagues at all levels of our great party and Trinidad and Tobago. Today, as we address you, the people, at the end of 2021, this indeed has been a very challenging year for our entire country and citizens. In fact, it has been a very bruising one. It has been one of tremendous pain, trauma, and agony for the constituents of Couva South. And I would conclude that the sentiments that I have expressed on behalf of the constituents of Couva South are similar in the other 40 constituencies of Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to seize this moment to, as I said, to wish you and your respective families and family members and communities a bright and prosperous new year, and for us to forge ahead with our nation's development in a very unified, committed, and dedicated approach in 2022. And as I hope and I focus on these thoughts, the reality is, my brothers and sisters, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, is that I do not expect any better or any sense of improvement under the government of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. And one may say, why at the end of the year this tone is being expressed here this morning? The reality is that we have to deal with what has occurred in this country over the last 6 years under the government of Dr. Keith Rowley, in terms of his first term and now into the second year of his second term as Prime Minister and governing the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The reality is, unemployment is the order of the day. Over 130,000 persons would have lost their jobs, and this would have impacted negatively on the ability of families to deal with their mortgage payments, their children's education, their healthcare concerns, and we could go on and on here this morning. And then we have a Minister of Health telling you that after 2,695 deaths in 2021, we have certainly done well in the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. at a time when we all know that the health sector is in shambles. And in fact, this Minister of Health seems to be a total stranger to the truth, and is someone who seems to be unable to uphold the public health regulations of which his office is sworn to uphold. And how can we forget that a couple months ago he continued to parade and regale himself by reminding Trinidad and Tobago that Oxford University had rated this country as #1 in the world. And what is the state of our education system? That too, we do not have the light at the end of the tunnel. Under Minister Nyan Gatsby-Dolly, we do not know how many children have dropped out of our formal education system. The mental trauma and agony of how children are coping in this COVID-19 pandemic era. And we, up till today, we do not have a clear picture of when schools will be reopened from a physical point of view, and whether children, our dear children, have the necessary devices to continue with their education from a virtual point of view, in spite of numerous promises and commitments from the government of the day. Where's the economic growth? Where's the job creation? Where's the diversification of the economy, which was promised to us by the then opposition leader, Dr. Keith Rowley, prior to September of 2015, through the manifesto of the People's National Movement. And of course, the infrastructural collapse in this country has been unparalleled and unprecedented in our political history since our independence. Potholes, landslips, collapsed bridges, the unreliable water supply, water leaks and so on. And we have Ministers Rohan Sinanan, Kazim Hussein and Marvin Gonzalez parading themselves as if they are success stories as it relates to the issues that are affecting the people of this country. And how can I forget that crime continues to be the order of the day, with the murder figures already surpassed that of 2022. And Minister Fitzgerald Hines, the Minister of National Security, can offer no hope and no sense of direction from a crime fighting point of view. And I'm sure that we will never forget as a nation, from a political point of view, that for the first time since our nation's independence, 2021 saw this country without a substantive commissioner of police. And from a historical point of view, one of the most important independent institutions in our country, that being the Police Service Commission, collapsed under the watch of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. And this morning, as I said, this is the reality of where we are. And as we go into 2022, the challenges confronting the people are indeed real. And I want to address a couple of these real issues which the people of this country will have to address as the government of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and the PNM continues its attack on the people of this country, on the democracy of this country, the independence of this country, and its institution. And in this regard, I now go in the direction of the decision which the government has taken as it relates to a mandatory vaccination mandate for the public servants in Trinidad and Tobago. This will be a very real issue which we will have to confront in the more or less the first 2 weeks of 2022. And it will be one of the people of Trinidad and Tobago versus the PNM government of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. Because this vaccination mandate that has been spelled out by the government, more so through the Attorney General, who has made it very clear that the government is not backing down on their position after having held a sham of what I would call consultation after being pushed by the trade union movement. They engaged in what I would call last minute or the 23rd hour consultation. It has clearly demonstrated to me and the public that the government of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley will continue its bullying tactics, its intimidation strategies and tactics, and they will continue with their deceit, lies and propaganda in the forthcoming year. Because this declaration or this vaccination mandate must be seen in a very clear manner. We cannot treat it, we cannot say it in no other way, but we have to call it from an opposition's point of view as we see it. And this is a declaration of war on all public servants, not only those who work in the ministries across Trinidad and Tobago, but indeed one on teachers, healthcare workers who are on the front line battling the COVID-19 pandemic on behalf of the people of this country, immigration officers, fire officers, defense force personnel, police officers, to add to the category of what we would term to be public servants. The government, through the Prime Minister, through its Attorney General and ministers of government, in Trinidad colloquial language, is now attempting to poke its fingers, or as I would say, dig out the eyes of public servants in relation to how they are treating with this particular matter. And we must never forget, my brothers and sisters, our great party, the United National Congress, in all its incarnation, from the days of the United Labour Front, has always stood on the side of workers, have always stood on the side of the people of this country. And we have always clamored for and issued a clarion call for peace, bread and justice and equality in our society. And in this regard, I want to also take the opportunity here this morning to make our position clear. Because there are those in our society, especially those in government. Recently, in the Christmas period, I heard the Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi, he attempted in some Christmas event down in his constituency in San Fernando West, he attempted to call out the leader of the opposition, the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, to say why the leader of the opposition did not do more as it relates to this whole vaccination trust in Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to make our position clear. We in the United National Congress, through the leader of the opposition, has made it very clear that we are in support of vaccination, but we are opposed to mandatory COVID-19 vaccination. For this, we feel it is in violation of our citizens' constitutional rights, and at the end of the day, human rights, privacy rights, and raises the very serious ethical question about the state's reach over the lives and civil liberties of our citizens in this country. And we are of the opinion, and the government is operating under the existing public health regulation to force. This has nothing to do with the creation of safe zones as enunciated by the Prime Minister. It is the highest level of deceit and conmanship that when a Prime Minister could come to the public and indicate to the public servants that we are in a direction of pursuing one of the creation of safe zones in the government offices and state entities. It is really forced vaccination, mandatory vaccination, and that is why I will tell the Prime Minister here this morning, it is the highest level of conmanship and deceit as it relates to this particular issue. And today we stand on the side of public servants, and we call on public servants to unite in their fight against this government, to challenge this move and whether it breaches their constitutional rights to be directed to stay home without pay. And in addition, this vaccine mandate must also be viewed in the context of an attack on the President of the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago in the person of Her Honor Deborah Thomas Felix, because the President of the court had made it clear, or stated very clearly, that mandatory vaccination cannot be unilaterally imposed by employers. And from my understanding of the operation of the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago, based on my 19 years of experience through the trade union movement, this sends a very strong signal of a frontal attack on the President of the court and the judges of the court. Because, my dear brothers and sisters, if you understand how the courts operate, at this point in time, the judges at the Industrial Court do not have any security of tenure. And therefore, the government has pronounced this, really boxing the judges into a corner and really providing them with no independence from a policy point of view as it relates to more or less dictating through their policy rollout that this, if you do not conform to what the government's policy is, your security of tenure, your reappointment may be in jeopardy. And these are the things that we have to keep a close eye on this particular government. Because at the end of the day, as I said, the United National Congress, through our leader, we have said that we belong to a party that is in support of vaccination. And at the end of the day, we are on record through our office which call upon the government on the 18th of February 2021 to get serious about its vaccination policy, as other governments in the region had already secured vaccines while our government sat passively waiting and did not take advantage of what was being offered by the government of Trinidad, the government of India, as it relates to its global vaccination program. So it was the government of the day that created vaccination hesitancy or vaccine hesitancy. It was a catastrophic failure in procuring vaccines in a timely manner. And where is the communication? Where is the rollout as it relates to what was promised by the Minister of Health in terms of going into communities and house-to-house programs as it relates to the education of our citizens to deal with the vaccination hesitancy issue? And as I said, we have always supported vaccination for diseases such as yellow fever, malaria, polio, mumps, and measles. So we will not be cornered by those who want to spread their propaganda as the United National Congress being anti-vaxxers in Trinidad and Tobago. We are just putting the issues on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago and ensuring that persons have that freedom of choice, taking into consideration their medical history and their medical the right to engage in medical consultation with their healthcare personnel to preserve their whole health and well-being. And we need to ask very important questions also. What percentage of the public service remains unvaccinated? Would all grocery, shopping malls and business places where public servants, workers and the general public, will they be declared movable? Will they be declared as safe zones? Who will be performing the work when government removes all these public sector workers and other workers from their jobs? Will public servants who are not being paid and forced off their jobs by the government of Dr. Keith Rowley, who will service their mortgages, who will pay their national insurance contribution? And today we want to ask the Minister of Health, the deadline of the 15th of January 2021, is it linked to the expiration date of vaccines in January 2022? And what percentage of the vaccines that are currently in trust by the government of Trinidad and Tobago through the Ministry of Health, what percentage of these vaccines will expire in February of 2022? And this is a government that has conformed over the last 24 months. We have heard about the WHO protocols and follow the guidelines of the World Health Organization. And is it now a total contradiction that we are hearing from the government again? Are they speaking with forked tongues? Because I want to quote from an article dated the 12th of July 2021 from the World Health Organization. The Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar did not say this. Wade Mark did not say this. Rudranath Indar Singh did not say this. But the World Health Organization stated that mandatory vaccination are a last resort. The World Health Organization warns against mandatory vaccination unless all other options have been exhausted. And this was stated by Dr. Hans Kluge, the Europe Director of WHO, who told a press conference that vaccination should not be made mandatory if you have not reached out first to the communities. And where is the community outreach, Terence Dayal Singh? Where is the community outreach, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley? I have not seen any community outreach in the constituency of Couva South, and I would conclude that there has been no community outreach in the 40 other constituencies of Trinidad and Tobago. So this must not be tolerated. The people must unify. The people must come together in telling Minister Dayal Singh and the Prime Minister that they are indeed protected by the Constitution of this country, and if they want to exercise their freedom of choice, as has been indicated by Senior Counsel Israel Khan, who made a case for being vaccinated, but also said that the Constitution is being breached, and he would expect that the government do the dissenting as it relates to upholding the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. And in that regard, about the power of the people and unifying and unity of the people, I want to deal with the very important issue of the establishment of a morgue facility which was contemplated by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And this morning, I seized the opportunity to congratulate the constituents of Couva South, more so in the community of Bokaro, who unified, who came together, who understood a sense of purpose in standing firm against a unilateral decision. Up to this point in time, we do not know who took the decision, how Bokaro in Freeport was identified as the geographic site for the establishment of a morgue facility, and there to store the bodies of persons who would have died as a result of the COVID-19 virus. And there continues to be a deafening silence from the Minister of Health, Terence Yelsing, and the Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Roshan Parasram, because we have to understand that the bodies of deceased persons are as a result of those who would have died in the public health system. And they insulted the citizens of Bokaro when they did not seek to engage in any public consultation. Whilst we are happy that good sense have prevailed, who made the decision to select the Bokaro site? Why was there no consultation? Why was there no respect for the Kuva Tabaki Talpar Regional Corporation? And there is a bigger issue that has to be addressed in the context of what transpired. And I heard in the public domain through one Keith Belgrove, I do not know if he had the authority of the Minister of Health and the Chief Medical Officer of Trinidad and Tobago, but as far as I know, he is a private citizen who heads a private entity. And the bigger issue that has to be dealt or should be dealt with is that although this matter is before the courts, why is there no leadership from the Prime Minister, the Attorney General, the Minister of Health, and the CMOH as it relates to the ban on open air cremations in this country? And as I said, although this matter is before the courts through the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha, and it will come up for hearing, I think, in the first week of 2022, today the United National Congress calls upon all these office holders to play their respective roles and withdraw immediately or revoke immediately the public ban on open air cremation, because Prime Minister, Attorney General, Minister of Health, and the Chief Medical Officer, if you had any care, empathy, and connection with the ordinary people of this country, you would know that families, humble families, financially challenged families, have to fork out between $25,000 to $30,000 to have their loved ones cremated via the crematorium process. And I am forced to ask the question here this morning, who is benefiting from this ban on open air cremation? Is there anyone in the government of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley colluding with persons involved in the crematorium process to keep this ban or this lockdown intact, so that poor people, humble families, who after having been subjected to the pain and suffering and trauma of COVID-19 have to find $25,000 to $30,000, when in Tobago, the THA through the Secretary of Health and Wellness, they have outfitted a container in Tobago which can house 45 bodies. They have transferred 14 into this supplemental morgue facility. And while in Trinidad and Tobago, we cannot do same and establish such facilities on the Couva Hospital or the Mount Hope Hospital, where there are great expanses of land to facilitate this. Somebody in government is colluding to ensure that this system prevails, so that persons who want to cremate their loved ones via the open air cremations are not being allowed to do so. Prime Minister, Minister of Health, CMOH and Attorney General, if you understand this pain and suffering of the people of this country, you will immediately revoke this ban and lift this ban. And Minister of Health and Prime Minister and Attorney General and CMOH, whilst you all are imposing and not backing down on the mandatory vaccination issue, fix the ordinary things that are near and dear to the people of this country. And I say so when you read today's Express, that is written by a story written by Anna Ramdas, have a heart for our loved ones. And I speak to, again, two of my constituents, one Diraj Autar, who died at the Port of Spain Point Fortin Hospital, on Christmas Day, somewhere around here, and also his mother, Sumarde Pasad, who is 81, who remains hospitalized. They were being told about, they were not able to track down her father as a patient, and Autar said she was told that her father's body was at a funeral home on Christmas Eve. When she went there, he was not there. At the funeral home, she was given a bag of personal items of another deceased person. And when she called Point Fortin Hospital to inquire where her father's body was, she was told he was still there at the hospital. Terence Dial Singh, she was also told that her father had his identification card and his personal items on him could not be located, and this was important for the funeral arrangements. And she's still waiting the process to be completed before planning a funeral to take place. This is the pain and trauma that persons, when their relatives, their loved ones die, they do not know where their bodies are. They cannot get their personal documents to facilitate the registration of deaths and so on. Terence Dial Singh, after 2 years, people still have to go through that pain and suffering. And where is the digital vaccination card that you promised the people of Trinidad and Tobago? Today, Antigua and Barbuda have launched it, I think, since October. Jamaica is well on the way with it. And you do not have a word, but you could tell the people of this country that we have done well as it relates to what? Total hogwash coming from the Minister of Health. And my last point I want to deal with is the impact upon the rise in the price of bread. Because the headlines are very clear. One, the Express bread prices rise. In the Trinidad Guardian, it is Kiss ups prices, and in the Trinidad Newsday, Kiss, Linda, Follow, and FM raise bread prices, my brothers and sisters. If the government again has any care about the people, they are connected, they understand the pain and suffering of the people, the government will immediately step in. And I am saying to the people of this country, we must not tolerate any political gimmickry from Paula Gopi-Skun, who one day will tell through NFM that it is 19%, then I think they're pulling back to 10%. The political gimmickry, Paula Gopi-Skun, is not being tolerated. The people will not listen to you. And the board of directors at National Flour Mill must take note. Paula Gopi-Skun probably cannot deal with this issue effectively because she is preoccupied as it relates to whether her son can get a license for some floating restaurant, which my comrade Wade Mark will deal with. The government must provide effective leadership on this crucial matter because there's high unemployment and the business closures and grave social concerns. is the government willing to explore to introduce a policy of applying value-added tax and duties on previous freight prices which have been successfully done in Guyana with respect to certain commodities? If the government could step in after a 15% increase in cement prices, surely it could do such in a matter for an essential food item, because at the end of the day, this price increase will have a ripple effect, and it is a complete turnaround, because the Minister of Finance wanted you to believe that the removal of VAT from basic food items will ease the inflationary trend that they have been unable to deal with in terms of the economic management of Trinidad and Tobago. So at the end of the day, the government continues to mamagai you, they continue to deceive you, and they continue to lie to you by telling you that they are doing something about the price of essential foodstuff, which is impacting on the ability of persons to provide bread and butter on the table, taking into consideration that over 75% of the workforce in this country are still working on 2012 to 2014 salaries in the public service and outside of the public service. So the real struggle is to unite in a manner that will send a clear message to the people, not the people, but the government of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, that you have failed in the last 6 years, and in the 7th year in 2022, we expect no different in terms of pain and suffering and an assault on the people of this country. I thank you very much, and I now hand over to my colleague, Senator Wade Mark.
Thank you, my colleague and friend. Brothers and sisters, at this time, we would like to address two issues. But in addressing these two issues, we would like to put them in some perspectives. The issue of what can only be described as the merry-go-round, yo-yo approach being taken by 4 government ministers involved in a matter that where there should be clear lines of accountability and responsibility, and let the chips fall where they may. And the other area I would like to address briefly, I am taking off from where my colleague left off. No subsidies for the poor. Rises in bread prices across the board. The second set of rises or increases we have witnessed. Kiss Bakery started it in September. And now you have NFM, a state-owned company, owned by the government, and the people of Trinidad and Tobago have now continued, leading to what my colleague have brought to your attention. But whilst there is no subsidies for the poor, whilst the government-owned National Flour Mill cannot subsidize flour and the prices associated therein, I will demonstrate where the government is subsidizing through exemptions, concessions, and incentives to their friends, to even government ministers, while they cannot see any progress as it relates to subsidizing basic prices for bread, because that is the byproduct coming from flour. Brothers and sisters, there is no doubt that there has been democratic decay, democratic recession, major scars on the very fabric of our civilization and humanity, based on the consistent, persistent, and systematic assaults and attacks on our democratic institutions, on our democratic values and norms by this dictator and his kleptocratic administration over the last 6 years. Those attacks have intensified over the last 2 years, using the cover of COVID-19 in order to unleash more assaults, more attacks on the rights, the freedoms, and civil liberties of the people of our country. So, brothers and sisters, not only have we seen a mismanagement of the COVID crisis and the deaths of close to 3,000 of our citizens, we have also seen during this period a rise in the infection rate. We are about the third, fourth, or fifth highest country in the world as it relates to death per capita. The number of new cases, as I said, have continued to rise. Our economy has regressed. We have gone from stagnation under the PNM to depression. 6 years of negative economic growth. The economy has contracted by close to 20%. Trinidad and Tobago has lost over $30 billion in revenues as a result of the contraction of our GDP over the last 6 years. Our GDP real per capita has collapsed over the last 6 years from US 29,000 or thereabouts to US 23,000. We have had a collapse. You have had, as my colleague said, growing, rising unemployment, underemployment. The labor force participation rate, which is a very important measure of the health of an economy, has collapsed from 64% under Kamla Persad-Bissessar to 54% under Rowley. That is where the labor force participation rate has reached under this government. So, brothers and sisters, as we look back and we do a quick snapshot of our economic health under this dictator, we have regressed in the last 6 years. And my brothers and sisters, not only have we regressed, the government continues to engage in nepotism, favoritism, and corruption. There's one law for the PNM, and their family, friends, and financiers. And there's another law for all of the rest of Trinidad and Tobago. That is what we have witnessed under this dictator. Lock out tens of thousands of our citizens for the last 2 years. My brothers and sisters, not only have they locked out hundreds and thousands of our citizens, they have had weddings. And those weddings have been attended by their friends and their family in clear breach and violation of the COVID-19 regulations. Brothers and sisters, the dictator facilitated the arrival of Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president of Venezuela, in complete violation of U.S. sanctions. The border was open to her. But when it came, brothers and sisters, to being fair and equitable in the application of the law, one law for the PNM, another law for the rest of us. That is why each one, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Trade and Industry, the Attorney General, and the Minister of Health, all are running away from taking responsibility for the fiasco that has taken place on the MV Ocean Pelican. No one wants to take responsibility. But we have the evidence here to bring to your attention. Could you imagine that somebody applies to the Minister of Finance in December of this year, around the 3rd or maybe before that, to get a special liquor license under the Act, the Customs Act? The Comptroller of Customs can only act when he's given instructions in writing by the Minister of Finance to so do. And the Minister of Finance instructed the Comptroller of Customs and Excise to grant to one Adrian Schoon a special liquor license. Here it is. This was approved and issued on the 3rd of December 2021 on the instructions of Colm Imbert, the Minister of Finance. But you know what is even more alarming? The Minister of Finance he didn't backdate it, but he made it effective from April. April, brothers and sisters, the 1st of April. The license is valid for the period 1st of April 2021 to the 31st of March 2022. So somebody applied in early December, you approve it on the 3rd of December, you made it retroactive to the 1st of April 2021. Something is wrong. Something is wrong with this. And then you have the Minister of Health, brothers and sisters, holding a press conference 2 days ago or 3 days ago, and never telling the country that he signed off a letter to the same gentleman of the Minister of Finance of the, I beg your pardon, the son of the Minister of Trade and Industry. He wrote a letter, according to him, to the Minister of Health on the 26th, which was Boxing Day, the same day that he was having that event. And the Minister of Health responded on the 28th. It is here. The letter is here from 28th of December 2021. It's addressed to Adrian Schoon, Managing Director, Ocean Pelican, Ocean Sweetness Limited, 25 Queen's Park West, Port of Spain. And brothers and sisters, here is the signature of Terence Dayal Singh. Look at here. It's here. The signature is here. And he never told the country that he wrote a letter to this gentleman, literally giving him the all clear, although he went on in his last sentence or paragraph to say, I'm not responsible for enforcing or granting. It is the police that will have to deal with this. Well, I think that the time has come for the police to intervene. I think that the police should get in touch with the Minister of Finance and get in touch with the Attorney General, who is skirting behind the issues by indicating that he can offer no advice. But somebody writes a letter to the Minister of Health indicating, on the advice of the Attorney General, X, Y, and Z. And the Attorney General comes out and says, I am not responsible. I offered no advice. Mr. Jacob, I know your tenure is coming to an end shortly. But before it does, I want to invite you to have a word with Imbert, Minister of Finance, to find out from Imbert how can somebody apply for a license, a special liquor license, in early December, and Imbert proceeds to make the license retroactive to April the 1st, 2021. I think he needs to clarify that for the police. And I think Minister Dayal Singh has a duty to come clean. So you may need to really interrogate and inquire into this piece of correspondence. And of course the Attorney General, who is hiding, dancing, and trying to play games with the people of this country. So we call on Acting Commissioner Jacob to do what is right. Interview these 4 ministers, including the Minister of Trade and Industry. She cannot escape responsibility for this situation. Her son is involved. What role did Paula Gopi-Schoon play in this whole matter? We need to get to the bottom of it. And therefore we call on the police commissioner to do his duty. Members of the media, I also want to bring to your attention what my colleague raised a short while ago. My colleague brought to your attention that situation involving prices, bread prices. I think it's important to raise it again. Bread prices going up by 9% according to Kiss Bakery. That is equivalent to about $1.30 to $1.70. A loaf of bread by Kiss Bakery is $17.50. That is the equivalent of 1 hour minimum wage. You add $1.70 to that $17, And brothers and sisters, you're talking about close to $90 for bread, a loaf of bread. A pack of hot dogs, $14. You add $1.30 to that. That's $15.30. Brothers and sisters, workers have not had a wage increase since 2013. They are living on 2013 salary, whilst inflation has eaten into their living, their standard of living and their quality of life through escalated prices of goods and services. So $1.30 with no increases in the minimum wage over the last 6 years. Really, I don't think this government ever increased minimum wage, as far as I recall. I know that we increased minimum wages for the workers on 2 occasions.
Right.
On 2 occasions. Did Kit Rowley and Jennifer Batiste, when she was there, ever increase minimum wages for the workers who are not organized in trade unions? I don't believe they did. But you, the government, you own NFM. You could instruct NFM to pull back. You can subsidize wheat via a subsidy to cushion the high cost of living that will arise as a result of these high prices for bread, pastries, and other products, doubles, bacon shark. All of these things have its basic ingredient or input, which is flour. So this is going to have a very negative impact on workers and their families and the ordinary people. Starvation is knocking at our doors for many families as a result of this decision. But brothers and sisters, while the government cannot and would not intervene to subsidize the price of flour so that ordinary people can purchase bread, you know what the government is able to do? They are able, through a minister, to bring legislation to Parliament to exempt that minister and others from paying taxes on a venture that would reap, that he stands to reap lucrative benefits to the tune of $50 million. I speak to the Alora Heights on Picton Road. When the last time I checked, it was being priced at $2.75 million per unit. You multiply that by 20. And this gentleman, gross income could be between the vicinity of $40 to $50 million. That is before tax. And he brought a measure to exempt himself and others from paying income tax on those properties, those so-called multi-family residential units. So whilst poor people are being punished and are being told to pay more for bread, a minister of government is smiling all the way to the bank at our expense, taxpayers' expense, because he got exempted from paying a certain portion of income tax on his development. So you could subsidize a Minister of Finance, but you cannot subsidize NFM. You understand? One law for the PNM, one law for the rest of us. Make the PNM rich and make us poor. That is the philosophy of the PNM. And brothers and sisters, it does not end here. You remember the Inez Gate scandal? That developer also has benefited from this exemption from income tax. So much so that he was able to grant to our Prime Minister $500,000 in discount. Where he was supposed to pay 1.8 million for his property, he ended up paying 1.2. So he gets 600,000, 500,000 off, discounted. And he was not alone. His daughter also got a $500,000 discount. But how come they can get discounts and the ordinary people are being told they must pay the full price? And don't give us no kind of artificial intervention here, Madam Gopiskun. We call on the government to fully subsidize NFM and roll back all prices that you have now imposed on the population. If you can get exemption from income tax for your private properties, we are arguing in the UNC, stop that and direct that or redirect that into subsidies for the poor. That is what we are saying here. And let me tell the citizens of this country, Faris Alwari has a problem with Juke getting two sources of income. But he has no problem with him receiving two sources of income. He receives his monies, his salary and perks as Attorney General. And as a shareholder with his wife, owning that property at 3 Alexandra Place, he gets over $600,000 a month. And over a 3-year period, he gets close to $23 million. And you know something? The rental lease for 3 Alexandra Place comes to an end in February 2022. We call on the government not to renew that rental lease with Faris Alwari and his family. And that money can be better directed at subsidizing the price of bread for the ordinary man and woman, the marginalized, the vulnerable, the poor, the needy. And I also want to draw to your attention a development that has me a bit worried. I do not know how many citizens in this country are aware that the National Insurance Board is effectively the owners in terms of shareholding, percentage-wise, of Massey Holdings Limited. They own 20% of Massey Holdings Limited. I raise this to draw to your attention a very important development, which is of critical importance for our enlightenment and edification. Brothers and sisters, you would be aware that recently, Mr. Alan Warner, the business partner and good friend of our Prime Minister, bought Presticon which was initially owned by Massey for $30 million. I repeat, $30 million. Do you know, brothers and sisters, that this $30 million incorporated the entire manufacturing site? All the cranes, all the machinery, all the equipment on 17 acres of land in Tunpuna Road for $30 million? We did an assessment of properties adjacent and not too far from that particular enterprise. You know how much for a lot of land in that area? $600,000. You know what 17 acres is made up of in terms of lots? 136 lots. When you multiply that, brothers and sisters, you are talking about a situation in which this particular developer, right, the value of that property could be as much as $68 million just for the land alone. The 17 acres of land is almost $68 million. We are talking about cranes. We are talking about equipment. We are not talking about machinery. Yet still, Alan Warner and his family were able to purchase Presticon. That they produce concrete sheets for bridges and piers, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but throughout the Caribbean. They have contractual obligations. And you paid $30 million. And when Massey bought that in 2006, it cost Massey 60% of that Presticon at that time, cost them $22.4 million. That was in 2006. $1 million in 2006 is not the same value of $1 million in 2021. Listen, this requires a police investigation. Something is wrong here. We have estimated Presticon to a value between $80 to $100 million. But it was sold for $30 million to Alan Warner and his family. We need answers. We need answers from Alan Warner. We need answers from a fellow called Robert Bermudez, who is the chairman and chancellor of the university and the chairman of Massey Holdings Limited. Because you presided, Mr. Robert Bermudez, over that arrangement. And we want Elliot Jervis Warner to also answer these questions, because Massey is owned by us through NIB. And just in case you want to play games, Unit Trust, which is the people's institution, they own 4 million shares in your company, Massey. And Republic Bank, they own 8 million shares. The value of 800 million shares. Unit Trust, the value of 400 million shares. And in the case of NIB, 2 billion shares out of a market capitalization of 10 billion. So in all, we own 30% or and above of Massey. So we have a right to ask questions. And we are asking questions on behalf of the people. How could you have sold Presticon for $30 million to Alan Warner and his family? We want answers. We want answers from Robert Bermudez. We want Bermudez. We want answer who's chairman of that company called Massey. We want it from Elliot Jervis Warner. We want it from the board and members of the NIB. This is a very serious matter. So as we enter 2022, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. We call on the government to intervene and subsidize those increases in wheat prices, just as how you're subsidizing, you're giving 10 years on the stock exchange for small and medium-sized businesses. No taxes for the first 5 years. 15% in the next 5 years. You came to Parliament just recently in December. You remove all green levy fund. They're not paying that. You remove all business levy. They're not paying that. Well, give the poor people something now. Give them something. So we call on the government to subsidize NFM. We call on the government at this press conference to remove that rental arrangement with Faris Alwari, which comes to an end in February of 2022. No renewal of that $23 million arrangement for Alwari. Use that $23 million to subsidize the poor in terms of lower prices for bread. So, brothers and sisters, these are some of the issues we would like to draw to your attention today. Because in 2022, there will be epic battles unfolding and emerging in our country. As we rise in defense, as we stand side by side with the working class in defense of their liberty, their humanity, their freedom, and their democracy. In 2022, it is the PNM versus the people. And the United National Congress, as a party that was born in the crucible of struggle for peace, bread, and justice, in defense of the poor and the working class, we shall be standing, we shall be fighting, we shall be struggling side by side with the working class, with the working people, with the marginalized, with the vulnerable, in defense of a better quality of life, a higher standard of living, and we stand in defense of our democracy, of our liberty, of our freedom, against totalitarianism and authoritarianism and this dictatorship that Rowley and his gang of thieves are trying to impose on our country. We will not stand idly by and allow Rowley and his gang of kleptocrats to ride roughshod over the rights and freedoms and liberties of the people of our republic. A word to the wise is enough. I pause at this time and we invite the media, if they have any questions or clarification, to raise with us. We are willing to entertain those questions at this time. All right, well, members of the media, thank you so very much for listening to our press conference this morning and into this evening, this afternoon rather. We'd like to thank you once again, and on behalf of our great party, the United National Congress, on behalf of our leader, the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, on behalf of the hundreds of thousands of supporters, well-wishers, and friends of this great party, the alternative government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, we wish you collectively safety. We wish you great health. We wish you struggle, unity, liberty. Fight for your democracy. Stand in defense of freedom. Stand in defense of your country, your community, your family in 2022. And let us remove this dictator like an albatross around our necks in 2022. Tobago did it this year. Let us do it next year. Thank you very much, members of the media. Good afternoon.
This Friday is Christmas Eve, but don't worry,